right, thank you. Good to be here. This is going to be pretty casual. I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we've used WordPress and WordPress VIP to create an open platform for contributors. I think that I would be very interested in hearing some of the challenges that both of the first two speakers have run into, both in having decoupled or a semi-decoupled setup and also in having an open contributor platform. It's created a bunch of unique challenges for us, and we're sort of at the beginning of the game and trying to figure it out, and I bet you guys are much farther along. So I called this Strikes and Gutters because I just wanted to go over a couple of wins that we've had and then some challenges that we've had as well. So John McAlester, I am Senior WordPress Developer at Thrive Global. And before I go into what Thrive Global is, I would just want to put up this slide right here. And so I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this thing sort of resonated with me. And it was, when you stop somebody on the street a lot of times that maybe you haven't seen for a while or something recently, and you say, "How are you?" And the first thing they usually say these days is, "I'm good, but I'm busy. I'm really busy," right? And I think this feeling of like busyness that people always have, there's a lot of noise coming at us all the time now. And one thing that Thrive is trying to do is help people eliminate a lot of the noise that's coming in and go from busyness to being more productive, right? And so the company was started by, I don't have the presenter slides up here. Is there something? That's okay. We'll just wing it. All right. What's interesting is that the company was started by Ariana Huffington. And why that's notable to say right now is that she knows big media publishing, right? So she started, obviously, Huffington Post. And so when she started Thrive Global, it was like, the first thing was like, let's get media platform going, right? So the challenge, I think, for the company was we need to build a scalable, and I'll go through kind of, what these terms mean. So scalable, it needed to be able to publish hundreds of posts a day, and it needed to be able to have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of user accounts that are active in the WordPress network. It had to be open so that like anyone on the globe could sign in and register and be able to start publishing right away and contribute to the media platform. And then obviously it needed to be a publishing system, right? So it needed to have editorial workflow, it needed to have media embeds, it needed to have all that stuff, all the stuff that people were used to with a publishing platform. And we needed to create it fast, right? So it was like somebody that knew this space really well, starting this company, expecting that this thing was going to get built super fast. And so that's what we've done. We're sort of on the beginning of that journey, right? And a few things I want to talk about are, it started as a media platform, but what we're learning to do now is use the WordPress CMS as a content hub and use the REST API to be able to pump content out to be able to be consumable by other applications, right? Okay, so our application stacks, I know it's not technically correct, but this is what we're using. WordPress, hosted on WordPress VIP. It's a multi-site network. We've got 2 launching soon, a 3rd site on the network. They are in English right now, both sites, but we're going to be launching an internationalized and localized site in Greek soon. And then we've got a decoupled, or I guess maybe we'd call it semi-decoupled React app that's hosted on AWS, right? And so one of the challenges that we've run into is that when you've got this setup, you have to oftentimes coordinate the deployments between the two, right? A lot of times a piece of information that needs to get is a prop in React needs to be in WordPress when you push that deployment, right? So I think the dream of like having the decoupled, totally headless theme and front end is something that I don't think has been fully realized by WordPress yet. And I actually think that the team, when they launched the API, weren't quite sure that that was the future of WordPress either. And so, you know, on this journey, I think I've found that I wish I had a theme that was built into WordPress, right? I think the API is super powerful for other things, but I don't think the headless, decoupled theme is really where it's at. And maybe I can speak a little bit about that as I go through here. So for Thrive Global, like I said, it started out as a media company, right? And I think the idea was that we would have an in-house team that would be editorial and writers, and they would publish a bunch of articles. But as a way to get a network effect, we would create a publishing system where people could come on, publish their own articles, and then there would be like a section of the site where people could start to publish. So as you can imagine, anybody who's done that starts to realize that the marketers get wind of, you know, a really sweet SEO opportunity, and they start pushing stuff your way, right? So it creates a bunch of challenges, like how do we have an open platform where people can publish, but we don't want to be publishing stuff that doesn't represent our brand or is just straight spam or stuff like that, right? So I get a little bit ahead of myself, so I'll come back and talk about, you know, how we solve some of those challenges. So we use the community content, you know, anybody can register, anybody can publish articles for us. We use it for brand recognition. There's some monetization with branded content partnerships. There's network affected distribution, which is, I don't know if I came up with that term thinking like just people being able to publish, putting it on their social accounts. It creates a wider brand awareness, right? And then also we take that content and via the REST API, we push it, or it gets pulled out into our mobile apps, e-learning courses, and third-party integrations, right? So let's get into that, right? So here's kind of where that goes. So we have the React front end for the web. Our mobile apps, the content actually gets pulled out and stored into another container. Those are like very over my head AWS, you know, storage containers, and then that gets consumed by the mobile app. And then we have also the platform API, right? So we have companies like Zenefits, Procter & Gamble. Those are the two that come to mind right now. But what they do is build their own dashboard, and we combine the user data that we have from the mobile applications and the content, and then we ship it all together to them. So they have sort of a holistic idea of like how people can improve performance, and then information for them about or to give them feedback and information about those insights that they're seeing. So I'll go a little bit now into how we work with the contributors, right, and some of the challenges with that. So right now we have about 60,000 contributor accounts in the system. Just like any application, not all of those are active. You know, the active number is much less, but it's a large number, I think, and I think there's a small group of WordPress systems that are, you know, having this many user accounts in them, you know. So in order to be able to have an open platform but not be just publishing a bunch of spam all the time, we've created, I kind of imagine it like they have to crawl over a short fence, and then they have to sort of get under a limbo bar a little bit, right? So the short fence that they have to get over is that when anybody registers, they can publish content right away, but we've taken out the featured image meta box. We've taken out a bunch of blocks in Gutenberg. We've taken out a bunch of stuff. And that gets us around safe harbor rules about people publishing intellectual property protected photographs and stuff like that, right? We've had some issues with that. So we consider those people, they're in the system, and what happens is they put a post in, and then it goes into a pending status. We have people in the editorial staff who go ahead and approve that, right? And then once people publish a few articles, we know that they're not just publishing spam or whatever. We just boost their roll up to what we call a VIP contributor, right? And these, when we launched the platform, we took the user roles of contributor and author and basically made them contributor and VIP contributor, right? So contributors, when they publish, it's always in pending status. VIP contributors, when they publish, they can publish just straight out, just goes right out into the world. The other thing we did is that we put some keyword filtering on all that content. So when the VIP contributors and the contributors, when they publish something, this is like the limbo bar part of it, they have to pass like a keyword test. So we can put like, there was a lot of like mattresses or something for some reason. It was like a huge thing. And the editorial team was like, tell them not to be able to publish mattresses. I don't know what that was about, but I guess mattress spam is like a huge thing. Okay, so getting into this a little bit, we replaced these default roles. We added in the custom roles. We modified a bunch of capabilities so that like some people could look at media libraries and do some other things like that. So the other thing we had to do is allowing people to come in and use WordPress as the UI for the publishing system is really great. You get like 10 years plus of like this mature application. There's been so much documentation. There's examples of pretty much everything you could think of. And that's great. But it also means that you have to modify things a little bit if you want specific experiences, because you didn't build it yourself. It was built, and then you have to modify it. So I think I mentioned this before. We removed some features. We moved a bunch of Gutenberg blocks, and then the overall goal of all this is to lower the amount of editorial work that has to be done manually. And like I said, it allows anyone to be able to publish, but it gives us a low amount of manual work that we have to do. So there's not a huge team that are in New York that are managing all this content that's coming in. We publish somewhere between 200 and 300 articles a day from the open community, and then our in-house team publishes maybe a dozen to 20 articles a day. So let's see. So those people, we have the team in New York. They're the editorial team. What they do is they do go through, and if something is keyword filtered out, then they have to accept it. We through some filtering and action hooks, we created a little UI so that they could accept posts and stuff. And then another big thing that we did is we're using this Co-Authors Plus plugin. And I think it's been a blessing and a curse. What it does is it allows someone, or what it does is it allows you to attach an author to a post object and display that as the author of that post. And it's not just the person who wrote the post. You can have multiple authors and display those, right? So this has been great because we have a bunch of like celebrity content that the in-house team writes in conjunction with celebrities, or there's ghostwritten content. And it allows our editorial team to be able to go in, create posts, and then just say, no, this is by, whoever it's by, right? So that's great. The issue, or the thing that makes it hard, is that what Co-Authors Plus does is it creates a custom post type that stores that author profile, right? And we no longer are using the default WordPress author profile. And it's difficult sometimes to explain to the editorial team, even though we've created automated ways where you create a register, or you register a user account, it automatically creates an author profile. Sometimes they don't do it the right way, or sometimes an account one or the other gets created, and the editorial team is confused about why that is. And this is kind of a point that over all my years, 10 plus years of working with WordPress, I think it's always better to try and use the system as it was built than try and attach on your own plugin or modify something like that. And so this is an example of that, right? I think that the system would be better if we just used the default user systems, right? And then figured out whatever the problem was that was causing that, figure out how to solve it some other way, rather than now we have this sort of decoupled custom post type that's like an author, but it's confusing because they also have an email in the users area. Anyway, it's confusing. But we're working through it. It does work now. It's worked pretty well for us. But it's something that I've noticed. Okay, so in summary, I have no idea how much time I've been up here. So the decoupled front end, to me, it's not a win. I get that like the idea of like having this decoupled front end that you can just style and it's totally independent and it doesn't care what CMS you're using, and it never seems to actually go like that, right? And all the problems that you're creating by not using the default WordPress theming system seem to be bigger than the problems that you're solving with the headless or decoupled system. So were it up to me, I would just use a WordPress theme at this point, and then use the API to pump content out for other things. WordPress as an open publishing platform, total win. We've had tons and tons of contributors. We've been able to have a huge community. We publish tons and tons of content. It's been a huge win. WordPress as Content Hub, also a huge win, right? Our platform team, our mobile app team are super pumped about how easy it is for us to add information to post endpoints, to all kinds of other stuff, and I can show them really quickly. They can hit that endpoint and be like, oh, yep, there it is, cool. I'm gonna, we'll pull it in and do whatever they do with it. And yeah, so leveraging WordPress API, also a win. So I guess it's like a double win for the API. It's basically how it goes. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to go to. Are there any questions? How long have I been up here, Ed?
Like 2 questions.
Okay, is there one question first? Yes.
Okay, I understand how you might have a versioning challenge, but what else sucks about using a React front end?
What else sucks about it? Okay, recently, as I'm sure you all know, there was a requirement to implement 2FA, right? Or an SSO solution. The way that first of all, we were like, whoa, we have 60,000 people that we have to notify about this, right? So that's a big challenge. And then we also figured out that like the way that our registration process works and talks back and forth, it makes it very difficult to implement 2FA. But we were able to figure out how to implement an SSO solution. So we were able to satisfy that requirement for WordPress, right? Again, I don't think you'd run into that challenge if you were running the default systems, right? What else is a bummer about it? It just seems like you run into things that have to be customized and thought through more often, whereas if you were using the regular theming system, somebody would have thought of it before, right? And I still think that like the idea of like, oh, well, it's decoupled, so now we can just skin it or like make it different. It doesn't matter because we're just going to be pulling the information in the same way. It doesn't ever seem to me like that is as easy as, like, oh, just have an agency figure out some new CSS files and stuff. There's always more considerations than that. So those are a few challenges. One more? Go ahead. Yes, I think so. There was a lot of like, can we just roll this back kind of thing, at the beginning. We have a user base that is into wellness. They're into diet. They're into health. they are sometimes picky about things, right? And so they were pretty vocal about like, oh my gosh, that's my phone. So, never fails. All right, so yeah, they're calling me now. I gotta go do something. There's a support request coming in. Yeah, no, I think it's been a win overall, right? Like they got over it. Just like every app, I feel like you make a big change, everybody freaks out. After a while, people get over it. There's been a bunch of like sort of embed issues and things. One of the problems I think with Gutenberg still is that the documentation's not mature yet. So going out and figuring out, I'm used to like just going Googling something and like on Stack Overflow or something, somebody has figured this out already. You just have to find it, and that's not necessarily true with Gutenberg yet. So I think a couple more years and more documentation, I think we'll be good. Yeah. Thanks.